Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. I've got a really interesting video for you today, which there's kind of two sides to it. The short part is I'm going to tell you how many eggs ball pythons lay, and then the long part is that we're going to get into kind of the scientific reasons behind this and give you an in-depth kind of thorough explanation of what you can control when it comes to clutch size and what comes down to the natural history of the species, so that by the end of this video you can be basically a ball python clutch size expert. So I've got Bobby with me to help me today. He's actually a little bit restless. I think it's kind of his breeding season here, but we'll see how he does. I'll probably be wrestling him throughout the video. So first of all, I'm going to tell you how many on average I think ball pythons lay. And I say I'm going to tell you this first of all because one thing I really hate is when you see videos or blog posts where they basically try to make you wait until the end of a video to find out what you want to know. That's one of my pet hates. It really annoys me. So, to start with, quite a few years ago now there was a scientific study on ball pythons in the wild. They collected female ball pythons and found clutches as well, so I was just seeing what he's up to, and they basically took the average of, I can't remember how many clutches, but it was a significant number, and the average number of eggs, so viable eggs per clutch, these scientists came to the number of 6. Now I think that's interesting. Bobby's probably attacking the microphone with his tail there. It is interesting to know how many they lay on average in the wild. For me, however, in captivity that doesn't really help us too much, because in captivity there's a different set of rules for everything really. You know, you're feeding your snakes more in captivity, they're living in a different environment, there's different stresses, different pressures, and just different stuff going on all around. So what I did was I kind of took that as a base, like, you know, an interesting kind of fact, because that's what any short scientific study is. It's an interesting start. And then I spoke to some other breeders and asked about their averages, and I looked back through my records in my Excel sheets of previous clutches over the last, I don't know, 10 or so years, and in captivity I came up with a number of 7 viable eggs per clutch, which when you think about it is an okay number. It's not a huge number, but it's an okay number. And well, you know, sorry, I'm itching all over because I've got allergies here, and the UK in the winter is not your friend when it comes to allergies. The climate here is damp, and yeah. Anyway, something you'll notice is that I keep mentioning viable eggs, and now it's important to remember that something you get a lot in ball python clutches, not every clutch, but in a lot of clutches you'll get something called slug eggs. And these are eggs which have basically developed into what almost looks like an egg, right? But it's not fertile. If you put a candle up to it, a candling light rather up to it, like a tiny flashlight, you'll see that there's no veins in there. It's just this kind of waxy, small, solid little, ugly-looking egg, basically. And after a while, you'll get used to these, and you'll just look at them and go, "Yep, okay, that's definitely not fertile." And you might say if you get a clutch of 8 eggs, you might get 1 slug egg. That's quite common, but sometimes things go wrong and you can get whole clutches of slug eggs. Now me last year I had 0 slug eggs out of 4 clutches, but I did have 1 baby die in the egg for no apparent reason. So just goes to show there are always things that can go wrong. So I did just want to dwell on slug eggs before we go too far into the video and kind of explain, obviously, the fact that they're not fertile. This is quite easy to understand, and you, like I say, you'll learn to recognize them quite easily, but I wanted to kind of explain my thoughts on what causes them also. Now, there's a couple things. One is temperature. If your male's temperatures have been too high throughout the breeding season, not only will that make your male uncomfortable and make him eat less if he does feed during the breeding season, some don't, but also it's a well-known fact around the world that sperm is affected by heat, so high temperatures can lead to lower sperm count, lower sperm motility for the males, And because the females also store sperm, high temperatures can influence the sperm even during the period that the female stores the sperm before using them during ovulation. So high temperatures during the breeding season are bad. I stick to 88, 89 Fahrenheit, and that's for the whole year for mine basically. If you start going above 90 during breeding season, you will end up with more slug eggs. At least that is my understanding of it, my theory. There could be things, there are other factors as well. Another factor is body weight, body condition of the males. If you have a very scrawny, underfed male, and you've let him breed anyway, and you've let him breed to several females, you're going to pay for that poor body condition of the male, probably with more slug eggs later on. Because, again, sperm condition isn't just affected by heat, it's affected by overall, I guess you could say, energetics, like, how well provisioned the snake's body is to produce those sperm cells. So, that's, like I said, we're going to get a bit scientific in this video. I'm going to try and skim over stuff and not go too far into too much detail, but I did want to explain to you that the takeaway with slug eggs is temperature. If your temperatures are very high, or also food, I guess, as well, I wanted to say, if your temperatures are high, your food is low, slug eggs will appear. So that's something to know. But if you get one or two, don't worry about it. It doesn't mean you're doing anything majorly wrong. If you have 5 clutches and they're all slug eggs, then you need to be concerned. You need to start thinking about your setups, how you're measuring your temperatures. I've got plenty of videos on all kinds of stuff you can look at. Bobby's kind of chilling out now. The old fella. He's going on for 15 or 16 this year, I can't remember. So, the next question that also comes up a lot, and I also wanted to cover while we're on the subject of eggs, is can ball pythons incubate their own eggs? And the answer is kind of. So they don't really have the muscle mass to twitch and generate what you'd call endogenous heat from muscular activity, like Burmese pythons, for example, or Indian pythons, who are much bigger and they've got that mass, they can kind of do that. So they don't, they can't directly affect the temperature of their eggs, but they can go and bask. For example, if the eggs get too cool, and use their body temperature from basking to warm up the eggs. This is one of the only times you'll see a ball python, bask out of choice, unless it's in a setup where it's been deprived of belly heat, but that's another subject. So what they do instead is, like I say, they do these little things like basking to increase the temperature of the eggs, or if they feel that the eggs are too warm, they'll move off them for a while. But really the main thing they do is they wrap around the eggs and they cover the eggs completely with their body. And what this does is cover the top of the eggs, the surface of the eggs, to stop those eggs losing moisture. So the main role of a ball python incubating its eggs, what you call maternal incubation, during this time the female's main role is to, do what she can with temperature, given that she's not a big snake, but mainly to stop those eggs drying out. And this is one of the main factors in kind of survival, and this is going to tie in a moment with what we discuss. So the other stuff that we need to discuss for this covering of the eggs and the body size to tie in all together for us to understand everything is the kind of various factors that influence how many eggs ball pythons actually lay, and the wrapping around them, covering them from losing moisture is one of the main things. But another thing that we first need to discuss just quickly is the fact that ball pythons, like mammals, birds, most large animals, are iteroparous. So itero, I think, means repeat in Greek or Latin, I'm not sure. But this is a kind of a life history trait, or I guess I should say a reproductive method, where an animal doesn't have a lot of eggs, but they produce, or a lot of young, but they produce them every year. And the advantage of this is that they can live for 10, 20, 30 years, produce young every year, and the survival, chances of those young will vary depending on how good the season was that year. And this gives them kind of a longer lifespan and a variety of different, I guess, various years and good and bad years, kind of a mix for their offspring to have different chances of survival. The opposite of this is semiparous animals, like, grasshoppers, some fish, perhaps. I'm not sure about the fish, but definitely grasshoppers, most bugs, stuff like that. Octopods, or octopuses, I'm not sure what you're supposed to say. Cuttlefish, stuff like that. Semiparous animals lay lots of eggs, and they lay them all in one go, and then they die. And that's their breeding method. Whereas, like I say, vertebrates, ball pythons mainly, most of them lay a smaller amount, but year on year. So a ball python, it just doesn't fit its natural history to lay 1,000 eggs. And what does fit its natural history is where the body size thing ties in and where the covering the eggs ties in. So basically, a while ago, I saw a study which was by Aubrey et al. Called Clutch Size Manipulation, Hatching Success and Offspring Phenotype in the Ball Python. And just to really simplify it, this was again on wild ball pythons, if I remember correctly. You'd have to double check that, but I'll provide a link anyway. So they got these ball python clutches, and they discovered that if you add more eggs to a female ball python's clutch, less of the eggs survived. And if you take eggs away, it didn't have any effect. So what does this mean, really? It means that, as I was talking about earlier about the female covering up the eggs with her body and really stopping the moisture escaping, it means that there's a set number of eggs, which is the maximum that a ball python can wrap around and protect from drying out. Go above that number, in this case by adding them in artificially, and some of the eggs will die. And this is interesting because if any of you are familiar with ornithology, or wildlife behaviour or anything, you might have heard of a guy called David Lack, who was a British ornithologist, and he came up with what's called Lack's principle. So basically, Lack said birds will only lay as many eggs as they can care for, or have as many young as they can care for, basically. And I think that this kind of principle applies for ball pythons, except for they don't care for them after they hatch. But I think that generally ball pythons only lay roughly as many eggs as they can wrap around and protect from drying out. And this kind of makes sense to me, and I think the way they applied it in this study to reptiles for a change is quite interesting, the way they looked at it. And this makes sense because if you think about it, snakes are they have easily expanding bodies. They could swell up and produce more eggs, and they don't. Even though it is tough on the female, they might be able to breed every 2 years and do more eggs, for example. But really, for a ball python, this wouldn't fit because they couldn't cover all of the eggs. And I think this is one of the main things that does control clutch size, and this is why, a snake Bobby's size, even though he's a male, a female his size wouldn't produce a ridiculous amount of eggs. And what you actually see is if you have a female that does a big clutch, say, 10 or more, often you'll see that she actually rolls some out. You call these rollouts, and she'll actually toss a couple to the side and wrap around the others, and it's like she knows she can't cover them all up properly, and that is kind of interesting. So what we're left with is this kind of general, for an average size ball python, this average size clutch of around 7 eggs, with 16 or more being really rare, and 2 or less being quite rare as well. And it does kind of fit with how many they can safely produce and how many they can wrap around. So it is interesting, and like I said, I will provide a link to the study so you can read more about it. But there's other reasons as well. There's kind of a lot to get to in this video, actually, when I think about it. So the next question that you would naturally have would be, why doesn't a female ball python just lay smaller eggs? Because their eggs are quite big. They're kind of this size. In a snake this size, that's a lot of size to take up per egg, if you like. So why doesn't a ball python just do 50 eggs and do little ones? And the only reason that I can think of for that is that they're in particular, they're rodent specialists. They will eat birds. I've never seen them eat reptiles myself, but they will definitely eat birds and rodents. And most of them seem to have a strong preference for rodents, particularly when they're small and you start offering them stuff. And the thing is, in my experience as well, when you give the babies food, they prefer stuff like back in the day I used to give live food because I was in the US and I was young, they prefer stuff that walks around. So they prefer hopper mice. They don't like pinkies that much. They like stuff that moves around. They like rodent prey of a certain size that can stroll past and trigger that kind of feeding response. And that is what the babies do. So that's kind of like their evolutionary path. They are rodent and, you know, generally warm-blooded vertebrate specialists. So a ball python that's too small to eat rodents wouldn't live very long. So there'd be no point to having a bunch of smaller babies that couldn't eat their prey of choice. You know, they've got heat-sensitive pits and everything else to eat this prey, but they wouldn't be able to eat their prey of choice, and they'd just starve. So there's no point to that, and that's probably another reason why they lay a lower number of eggs, but bigger eggs, which can seem like a shame, but, you know, that's just how it goes. And it's also worth mentioning at this point that, you know, ball pythons, they are in the genus Python, which is what we call, you know, in brackets, the true pythons. So their closest relatives are, like I said, you know, Burmese pythons, Indian pythons, some of the largest, kind of chunkiest snakes on the planet. And from being from a big background like that, a big, you know, genetic background, so you call it phylogeny, the family tree basically. But being from that kind of family tree, they might have shrunk down their size over the eons to feed on rodents and, you know, fit into like hiding places quite easily and become a reasonably small snake. But they've still got that giant snake heritage and ancestry, if you like, and that may be another reason why they have, you know, proportionately quite large babies, which is interesting. So there's quite a lot to think about from this video, and what I really wanted to do is give you kind of a more in-depth explanation of why really over 20 ball python eggs is extremely rare. It's almost unheard of, and you know, over 10 is unusual, and it's not just because it's not like you haven't fed them enough. It is because, you know, that's their natural history, and that's how they are. That's natural, and there's not a lot you can do about it. There are some factors that you control. So when it comes to the factors that you control as the owner or the breeder, you can control the temperature they are in, the hygiene, and the amount of food they get. So these are the things to watch out for and think about when you're running up to the breeding season. Make sure if your female gets, say you've paired a female in September once, maybe you paired her twice with a male, they've locked successfully, and end of September you notice that the female is going absolutely crazy for food. At that point, don't follow what the guides say online on the blogs and stuff, only feed an adult once a month. That is the kind of advice that will end up to you making your female either produce a poorly provisioned clutch or just absorb her follicles basically. So, you know, tailor the amount of food to your snake's behavior, and if you've got a female that you're breeding, give her adequate food, and your males as well. Don't keep them too hot, and make sure they were well fed in the run-up before the breeding season. So, like I say, I know that was a lot to take in one video. I hope most of what I've said has made sense. But if you do find it interesting, please do like and subscribe. And if there's anything you want a further explanation of, or anything else you want linking to, or anything else you need, just please comment and get in touch. And as always, please comment and get in touch with more topic ideas as well for future videos. Thank you very much.